You're listening to Write the Book Now interview and podcast show with host and creator Dr. Sharon H. Porter.
Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Sharon, and you are watching Write the Book Now interview and podcast show. It is my pleasure and my honor to interview authors from the Gyrlfriend Code Sorority Edition. I'm so excited. This is day 3 of 3 phenomenal days, and we have Chanel Johnson with us today. We have Dr. Melissa Noland-Chester. We have Anise, and we have Cynthia Coaxum. Welcome, ladies. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, guys, we've had 2 phenomenal days of interviews, and you are rounding up the 3rd day, and I know that it's going to be dynamic as well. We're going to ask each of you to please share just a little bit about your background before we actually dive into your chapters. And we're going to start with Miss Chanel Johnson.
All right. Well, hello. My name is Chanel. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. I am an educator. I support K-12 math and science and instructional technology coaching, and a wife, 3 kids, 9-year-old and 5-year-old twins.
Wow, I bet they keep you busy.
Yes, they do.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you and welcome. And next, please, Dr. Melissa Noland-Chester, please introduce yourself.
Hi again. Like she said, I'm Dr. Melissa Noland-Chester. I am professionally trained as a college professor. However, I stepped away from being a professor and started my own nonprofit where I support educators, K-12 educators, through my member nonprofit, Black Educators Rock. We have a national organization, and we host an annual summer conference, professional development conference. In addition to, I am also a real estate broker and a real estate instructor in the state of Florida. And I am also a wife and mother of 2 boys, Aiden and Alex, 9 and 8. 8 and 7.
Had to get it right? Had to get that right.
Yeah, they're looking at me like, no, that's wrong.
That is too funny. Well, welcome, Dr. Melissa Noland-Chester. And next, I'm going to welcome Miss Anise.
Hey, how y'all doing? I'm super excited to be here and to be a part of this project. So I am Anise. I am a registered nurse. I am a mother of a 5-year-old boy. His name is Caleb. He'll be 6 on next week. I am now a 3-time best-selling author. I'm a blogger, poet, and also CEO and founder of Never Out of Ink, where we create thought-provoking content to inspire others through media and through words. And I have a personal mission to transform lives one mind at a time.
I love it. Thank you and welcome, Anise.
Thank you.
And next, please introduce yourself, Miss Cynthia Coaxum.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Sharon. My name is Cynthia Coaxum. I am also a mother of a 15-year-old daughter. I am the utilization manager in the healthcare industry, and prior to that was the chief operating officer of a federally qualified healthcare center. I've been in the healthcare industry about 20 plus years, clinical training as a social worker, but a lot of work doing in the administrative work with nonprofit organizations and state and federal government agencies and doing monitoring and compliance for healthcare services. So thank you to have me a part of this project. So thank
you. Oh my goodness. It is time to dive in. Ladies, the stories are amazing, first of all. And I just cannot wait for our viewers and our listeners to hear just a little bit about it, because they know they're going to need to get this book. And Chanel, we're going to start with you. Okay. So you were the Discovery Code. You are a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. And your title was Developing a Unity Mindset, was your chapter title. I was intrigued by your chapter because it was very similar to my life. You spoke about your cousins being your first friends and that introduction. Please share a little bit about that.
So, like I said, I'm from Atlanta. My family, for the most part, is here, and my cousins were my first friends, and I actually have a little sister, and I didn't choose to, talk about her because that's a whole different bond that, that's something totally different and sacred. But with my cousins, we were best friends and still are. We're good, but just that bond. When we grew up, we kind of went our separate ways, and I just didn't expect that to happen. I didn't know it would happen, and I always longed for that type of bond. That was that fulfilling need that I was looking for.
And it was when I was reading, I was like, oh my goodness, even though my cousins and I, we're still close, but exactly, you talked about when you go off to college and then you see them with other people. That's exactly I was like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what happened. And it does happen. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So Dr. Noland-Chester, your title was appropriately titled Sisterhood, Scholarship, and Service as a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and you were the distinctive code.
Yes.
And again, I interviewed, this is the third night, and each night there was someone that talked about how we just did not have a background knowledge, a working knowledge of sororities prior to us joining this wonderful organization. I guess I'm a little biased. Okay. But we didn't know. And so it was about 2 to 3 people every night that said that. Talk about that and how your introduction into Delta was, since you didn't have a working knowledge of that.
Yes. And so just like Dr. Sharon said, so my code was the distinction code, with D, the S, and T being capped. And so my code was about the three aspects of Delta that make a Delta woman. And like she said, I guess for me, those are the 3 things that when I think about who I am, that's just who I am as a person. And so as I started my first, I guess, like realization about sororities, I was actually in college, and it was just like, oh, sororities. And then when I watched them and watched who they were and got to know different women who were a part of the organization, I tell people that you have to pick the sorority that fits and that feels intensely true to your spirit. And Delta just has always fit my spirit and my soul because its basic tenets make up who I am. And so it was just watching these women, and then I learned that they all were Deltas, and it's just a certain characteristic that they had.
I love that, because again, that was my story. Not until I stepped on the campus of my university was I really introduced to Delta. So thank you for that. And next, we're going to go to Anise. But first, who are you? I love that title, Jay. And then you are the self-acceptance code. I thought that was interesting. Now, I want for you to talk about this plant. You talked about having a new home, and you had a plant that you made your house beautiful, but you put it in a place where there was no windows and no light. And that analogy that you did to your friendship and relationship was phenomenal. Can you touch on that just a little bit?
Absolutely. So I got a new house, and I was super excited about it. And I said, okay, well, now you got a new house, like you're grown, okay? You got to get your plant. So I got me my first real plant, and I set it in a corner of the room that just made it look nice, but there was no sunlight. And then I wasn't really taking care of it, like I wasn't watering it. So it would fall limp. Then I would water it, then it would come back, then it would fall limp, and I would just keep repeating the cycle until one day it died. And then I looked at that like me and my life and my relationships and my friendships, like you are stuck in this one spot and you're not really accepting or knowing who you are right now. And you need to water where you have been planted in the season that you're in. But I didn't. I kind of stayed there. So eventually when I got up and I started to take myself out to the sunlight, that was me accepting who I was and knowing that I needed to be better. I needed to do something different. Then things began to shift a little bit. But when you do that, you have to stay consistent with it. And that is where the watering comes into play. So I had to water myself, water my friendships, or they would keep falling limp, just like the plant, until eventually one would die out, or either I would, one or the other. So it's really choosing to water and give light to your situation, to yourself, and to who you are, or will you just let it fall limp and die? And that's it's what you have to do. It's your choice.
Wow, I tell you, I thought that was just so impactful. And one of the things that you said was so enlightening, that sometimes we are in relationships that also you look good and you feel good, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really give you, there's no sunlight, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I love that analogy. And so I'm a big analogy person, so I really love that. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. And Cynthia, you are
Yeah.
next. Oh my goodness. You again, appropriately, Fortitude Code. And your subject, your title was Blood, Sweat, and Tears, How to Build a Winning Team, My Sister. I like, okay, come on with the football analogy. Okay. It was unbelievable. I tell you, I was just like, okay, I got to use this somewhere. Oh my goodness, giving you credit to do this. But it was absolutely phenomenal. I want you to first talk about this. You said understanding the value of each player, that you must understand, because your whole story was an analogy of a football team.
Yes.
You gave everyone their position.
Yes.
And this thing was understanding the value of each player. So everybody has value. Everyone is important. Talk a little bit about that in relation to your girlfriend situation.
Yes. So thank you, Dr. Sharon. You're right. I talked from an analogy of football. One, to make the book an opportunity that everyone can relate to, not just girlfriends, but also men that understand football. And there's women, of course, that understand football as well. And over the course of time, I think we have women and friends and girlfriends that are coming into our lives that impacted us at different levels. When I talk a little bit about blood, sweat, and tears, in that sometimes we cry together. We work hard together, just in the sorority. We work very closely and just sweating to get the job done for our community and the services that we're putting out, that we all play positions and bring value to the relationship. And so it goes through levels of that. And so as in football, there's positions that each football player plays on the field to make a successful team. And so the chapter really goes into positioning these friendships, positioning relationships that we have to kind of bring value to what you need, or value to the work that you're doing, or as well as an individual to impact winning. So that's the bottom line, just kind of winning. So you have to tune into the chapter.
You do. I tell you, you have to get all these plays and who's. She had the quarterback, she had the coach and the cheerleaders. It was wonderful. I loved it. We're going to come back to that. Chanel, you are up next. So you are, again, just like many of us, you did not have a lot of exposure to sororities until coming. And again, you shared the reason why you chose your sorority. And so I want you to talk, first of all, a little bit about that whole notion of not really having that background, because as we know, there are some people who go to college with the intention of pledging a certain sorority. Yeah. And then there was those of us who really had no knowledge and stepped on the campus to see where we were going to go. So talk a little bit about your journey and your process to Sigma Gamma Rho.
Well, of course, going back to my core of that connecting with my people. So going to college, again, I didn't know any sororities. I would see them. And again, I was a pretty social person. I had many friends, but they were, like my book, very social, surface level. And I started to ask questions. In fact, one of my college roommates was Delta. And she would just explain to me about the sorority. And I would say, well, how many are there? She said, well, there's 4. But the key is to do your research. Like, don't go in and just go for the trend because it looks good. Do your research, find who you identify with. So at the time, I was an educator major, and I did my research, and I found who related to me the most. And again, I never heard of Sigma Gamma Rho, and I tend to go a different road. Like, my cousin is an AKA, and that was really it, but I didn't get to talk to her as much about it. But I chose the road least traveled, the one that, I felt I was comfortable with, that I could be with. And again, like I say in the book, all of them are phenomenal. When you really do your research and you get to the core, we all have a lot of things in common. But it was what I needed at that time. And I'm glad that I did it.
I love that. I love that. And you also used basically the whole highway analogy, the 285, which I tell you, I love some analogies now. But it was really, really, it made you really understand what it was that you were trying to say. And you really talked about how you had to get away from the loop, basically. That
Yeah.
285 was just that loop going around the city. And you had to really go beyond that.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so impactful for you to understand that, and that, you know, it just allowed you to find out who you really were. I thought that was wonderful.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I tell you, guys, when I tell you, you're going to have to get this book, you're going to have to get the book because it's amazing. Dr. Noland-Chester, you talked about sisterhood providing safety, protection, healing, understanding, solace, and empowerment. That is really deep because, you know, when we have a sisterhood, and whether it's a sorority or not, and we just happen to all be a part of our sorority, but sisterhood goes deep and it goes wide, right? So I want you to talk about this just a little bit, because you talk about how your biological sisters, you didn't have that bond, that sisterhood, but you have since found that through the sorority. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Well, I'll talk about the fact that, like you said, I do have biological sisters, both on my mother's side and on my father's side, and always have yearned to have that bond that only women can have. And we all know that, you know, when it comes to women and sisterhood is magic. It's something that, I mean, it's organic, it's innate, and it just when it's right, it's right. And so I didn't have that with my own siblings. And so it was something that I always, I guess, yearned to have. And because I always yearned to have it, and when I saw Delta Sigma Theta and I saw that was like one of their foundational principles, and I watched it and I watched them, and I became enamored with the organization and just started, just like she was saying earlier, doing my research. And what I came to realize is that when it comes to sisterhood, that sometimes sisterhood are all those things, but sisterhood can also be disappointing. It can break hearts. It can be heartbreaking. And so always striving to be the sister that I want others to be to me. And then sometimes that is to my detriment, because I will give to my sisters more than my sisters are giving to me. And so learning how to balance that out was like a big thing for me as it related to sisterhood.
Wow, that's really something. Thank you for that. Woo, I tell you, this is Gyrlfriend Code, the Sorority Edition. Bestseller. You got to get this, I tell you. Anise, I want you to talk about your quote, through vulnerability, you found freedom. How?
Absolutely. So when you are in the chapter, I say that I was on everybody else's road, you know? So when you are comparing yourself to other people, when you are trying to like fit in with everybody else and be like everybody else, you have no sense of who you are truly. When I joined Delta Sigma Theta, I was finally on my journey to becoming whole and to becoming who I knew that I could be. But as much as other people want to be there for you, if you're not ready to let people in, then you won't do that. Before I met them, it was me trying to do everything on my own, or being very, very selective on who I would say something to, or most likely not saying anything at all. So joining that sisterhood, Delta Sigma Theta, it allowed me to really open up. And I feel like once you are transparent, once you are vulnerable, that's when you begin to feel that freedom in the inside of you. So I was able to openly express myself to these women about my feelings and what I had been going through and what was going on, whether it was late nights in the dorm room or no matter where we were. And I don't know if they know the impact that they had on me, but it was a major impact, because that pushed me into me being more confident and more secure in myself, and helped me to grow into the woman that I am today. And I do want to, it's just really quick, I want to say this, because this was just God to me. The day that I crossed Delta Sigma Theta, that was the exact same day that my father died 5 years before. So that day, he gave me a whole sisterhood to take away the pain that I felt on that one day. So I am just in love with my sisterhood. I love Delta Sigma Theta, and I'm going to be there until I leave this earth.
Wow, that's powerful. I love it. And the one of the things that you also said is that when you embrace who you are, show people who you really are so that they can choose whether to stay or to go. And I thought that was just so authentic, because when we do, as one of the comedians said, when we bring our representative up front, people don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. But if you are authentic and show who you are, you can take it or leave it. And I love that. I love that. Absolutely. Okay, let's go, Cynthia. You're up next. Yes. So I want you to talk about, and you talked, I said you gave everyone a position, and I loved it. But I want you to talk about the chaplain. You had a team chaplain. And, we cannot get through this life without prayer. At least I can.
Yes.
And so I said you had the quarterback, you had the cheerleader, you had the coach, but you named a team chaplain. Talk about, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about the book, but the importance of that prayer piece to make us get through what you needed to get through.
Oh, absolutely. So as you mentioned, yes, I do talk a little bit about the chaplains. And the importance of faith in everything that we do is the utmost. God is first in my life. And the opportunity in going through like trials and tribulations and relying, and I had prayer warriors throughout. And so when you read the book, it would kind of get into my story and things that happened throughout a journey over the last 15 years. But I had sisters and girlfriends that, even though we were not in the same perspective area, things that I was personally going through would never fail in humbling to come together in prayer. One of my girlfriends, who is now my Sarah, was my roommate in college, for an example, and a PK kid, a preacher's kid. And so oftentimes would sit and talk with her, and we would go in prayer, just kind of dealing with life and the struggles that we're facing, and never failed that she talked a lot about how God would have our back. He would not leave us and never forsake us through that. Had two other girlfriends just the same, where we were in school a little bit and enjoying our party days a little bit, but saw a profound walk in her Christian faith as well. And so things that we were going through personally as well, oftentimes leaned on her, and we would go into prayer as well. And then another one of my chaplains in the chapter, and still to this day is my faithful prayer warrior in walks and trials. So I think it's important as a whole that we always have a foundation, a spiritual belief and foundation in our sorority is built on Christian principles as well, that we hold that dear, that you have someone to come to when you need to cry, and this to be in prayer and encouraging and uplifting at one another, that they talk about, and that we keep in mind that God would not leave us and never forsake us, and he's there. And so those prayer warriors were one that I still kind of just called on today, and it just never fails. So in the book, it's same with the analogy on the team. Sometimes that chaplain can't travel with the team, but every game that they go through, a team has a chaplain that just go in prayer for the team, prayer for the safety, prayer for everyone on the team, the coaches, the players, that they are all on uniform and together, but working collectively together just to have a good time, but just keeping God first. So yeah, prayer is very important.
Just amazing. I tell you, when I say these stories are amazing, I tell you, the launch is July 27th in Alexandria, Virginia at Courtyard Marriott. If you are in the Washington, D.C. area, or if you're planning to be in the Washington, D.C. area, you need to make sure that you are here for this launch. I would love for each of you to share just your contact information. How can individuals contact you? How can they purchase the book from you? And how can they follow you through social media? Dr. Melissa, if you could please start.
I can be reached through my website. I have a website. It's www.solution2success, all one word, TO, Solution to Success, as well as I can be reached on Instagram as Dr. DST, and I am also available on Facebook as Dr. Melissa Noland-Chester. And if you Google Black Educators Rock or rockconference.org, you can also find me that way through my nonprofit.
Awesome. Thank you. Anise, please provide your contact information and how can individuals purchase the book from you?
Absolutely. So I'm on all social media at Anise. That's Jayanise. That is including YouTube because I have inspirational videos on there. You can reach my website is www.neveroutainc.com, and that's OUTTA. And then in order to purchase the book, you can go through the website or you can message me. I am completely available.
I love it. And Cynthia, please share your information.
My last name is Coax as an X-ray UM. You can purchase the book you can DM me as well through Facebook or Instagram, and I'll be happy to share a copy. So thank you.
I love it. And Chanel, please share your information.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram. My Instagram name is Robellious, RHOBELLIOUS 2. So my line name and my number. Also, you can find me on Facebook at D. Chanel Johnson, and on either one, you'll see the link to purchase the book.
I love it. Guys, I just want to say thank you. Your stories are impactful. It is going to resonate and touch someone. My guests tonight, Anise, Dr. Melissa Noland-Chester, Cynthia Coaxum, and Chanel Johnson. I thank you, ladies. What an absolutely phenomenal interview. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we want to see you July 27th right here in the Washington, D.C. area, Alexandria, Virginia, Courtyard Marriott. So please, definitely make sure that you get the event right. It is free, but you have to RSVP. So again, this is Dr. Sharon. This is Write the Book Now, interview and podcast show. And as always, if there's a book inside of you, don't wait. Write the book now.
Thank you for joining another episode of Write the Book Now. If you are contemplating writing a book, don't wait. Write the book now with Dr. Sharon. Contact her at info@writethebooknow.com. Also, take a moment to follow us on social media at Write the Book Now.